Welcome to Strong by Nature, your portable campfire sessions for living strong, balanced and connected, the Grizzly way. Today I want to talk about something that I'm only really digging into myself right now. Breathing. Not the automatic kind we do without thinking, but the kind that changes how we move, how we think and how we show up. Now I've known about the benefits of breathing for years. I've just never really given it the respect that it actually deserves. Even just like the basics, the most fundamental aspects of breathing is quite often overlooked. You know, we've got like a world full of mouth breathers. And I'm not going to pretend I know all the science behind why mouth breathing is bad, but it's just bad, all right? We need to breathe through our nose. We're getting more oxygen when we breathe through our nose, and you just need to look at nature and see that the only other fucking mammal that's breathing through its mouth is a dog when it's cooling itself down. Right, opens its mouth, big deep breaths, because it doesn't have sweat glands. It doesn't have another way to cool itself down. We're literally the only other animal that's switched over to doing that. So my personal journey and everything with breathing and my discoveries with it early on. So when I was going back again to the start of my real fucking fitness and awakening journey, when I was running a lot when I was living in Taupo. So I was doing a lot of running because I was good at it, and it was a good kind of release for me, and the people I was living with at the time were really into their Ironman and stuff like that. So running was a good sort of thing I could do and still get, a lot of encouragement for doing it and that. So they also got me into swimming, telling me that swimming was also super beneficial and swimming was going to help my breathing with running. Now, I learnt to swim at a young age, but I was never part of swim squad or nothing like that, so I was always an adequate swimmer. I could get myself out of trouble, but I wasn't ever going to win a race or nothing like that. I didn't have proper technique. I could just keep my head out of water and get myself out of danger if I needed to. So learning to actually swim a bit more efficiently and understanding what was going on with your breathing while swimming had an immediate sort of effect on my running, because the thing with swimming is like you've got your head underwater for X amount of time, right? And you lift your head up every however many strokes you're going to do it, but you've got that set period where your head is underwater. You've got a short window where you're lifting your head out of the water, so you don't want to be using that window to breathe out and also breathe in. You want to get your breath out while your head's under the water. That split second your head's out, that's when you take your next breath and you carry on. And obviously there's going to be a window as well of how long you can hold your breath before it starts affecting your performance. And also you don't want to be turning your head every one or two strokes, because that's just not going to become efficient either. You need your head down and fucking aerodynamics, not the word, water dynamic. You know what I mean? Like you need your head down and straight, and you're going to be more efficient with the swimming there. So about 3 to 4 strokes tends to be kind of that golden sort of window from what I've found. And again, don't fucking quote me on that because I'm not an Olympic swimmer. But yeah, getting used to that rhythm and that pattern with swimming, I then started to notice how that was beneficial with running, and I started to become a lot more aware of my breath when I was running. Not so much to the extent of like going into this deep fucking hypnosis and performance boosting breathing or nothing, but just becoming more aware of these cycles. And then years later, so I was running on and off. Running's always kind of been part of my regime to a certain extent. When we were living in Gold Coast, a good 7 or 8 years later on, I was still running every morning. That was kind of like part of my early morning routine. I'd get up and I'd go for a run straight away, and then that way, if I didn't do any exercise later on during the day, at least I'd done my run first thing in the morning. And I started to research a little bit into the stitch and why I was getting that. So if you're not familiar with the stitch, I'm fucking wildly surprised at that. But if you're not, it's this sharp pain you get down the side of your body while you're running. And my whole life I was told that was because I'd just drunk water or I'd just eaten food before going for a run. But when you're getting up at 4:30 in the morning and going for a run straight away just on, a few sips of water, that theory, all of a sudden you're like, well, that doesn't make sense because I haven't had anything massive in my body for fucking 8 hours. So I started to look into it more, and what I discovered was that our liver position plays a big part in that. And when we are always breathing on that right hand side of our body, when our breath comes in and out on that same step as the impact of us hitting the ground, and the liver's bouncing up and down, because the liver's a fucking massive organ, right? So that's bouncing up and down, you're breathing in at the same time, and that's what's causing the stitch. Again, fact check me on that, but my experience made me feel like I'm probably fucking on the money. So I started looking into this breathing pattern that runners were talking about, which is a 3-4 pattern. So you would then breathe in for 4 steps and breathe out for 4 steps, and not just to eliminate the stitch, but it was also eliminating injuries on the same side of your body, because when you're always, because we breathe in and out on our steps, whether we mean to or not, and by doing that, that's like a crazy amount of force on that side of your body, because every step you take when you're running, apparently, again, fact check me on this, is up to 6 times your body weight coming up through your ankle, knees and hips, which is why proper shoes is very important for running as well. But lost my train of thought there. But yeah, breathing, swapping sides with your breathing is stopping all of the impact on one side of your body. It's avoiding that stitch. So I was starting to learn a little bit more about the patterns, the importance of at least patterns of your breath. Then a few years later, come getting into CrossFit. So those of you who aren't familiar with it, there's a couple of exercises we do in CrossFit. There's one called a thruster. I say we like I'm still training it. I stopped that a long time ago. Thrusters and wall balls, very similar movements. So wall balls, you take a big heavy medicine ball, you squat down, you throw it up to the air, it bounces off the wall, and you catch it, rinse and repeat. Thrusters, very similar. You got a barbell in the front rack position on your chest, you squat down, you stand up and you press it overhead and you sit back down. So you're doing this stand up overhead motion over and over and over. And people get fucking ruined doing these exercises. You know, people get gassed. And so me being aware of how important breathing was already with your performance and not getting gassed and short of breath, I started to play around with the timing of when I was breathing in and out with both of these positions, both of these exercises, and that made a massive difference. I wasn't getting as gassed as easy, and the exercises didn't seem as bad. All of a sudden it was more about my legs burning rather than my lungs burning. And same thing once I got into jiu-jitsu. Obviously going into jiu-jitsu, I felt like I had a reasonable advantage because I was already pretty fit. I was already training functional movements. I was already training my mobility. And I was going in with not a huge amount of ego, you know, like I started it in my 30s and I'm not a massive dude anyway. So going in with these young fit guys, I was like, okay, like these guys are already going to ragdoll me anyway, so I'm just going to go through the motions and focus on technique. Anyway, you end up a lot in jiu-jitsu in these horrible positions where you're stuck underneath somebody and their body's pressing on your head and you've got fuck all space to breathe. But even in those moments, I was like, well, if I can at least suck in some air, like that's better than nothing. And just being able to zero back in on my breath in some of those positions, it gave you just enough of a window to operate, especially when somebody's on the top and they don't really know what they're doing and they're panicking and they're moving unnecessarily anyway. Like if you can just breathe for a couple of seconds, 9 times out of 10, their dumbass is going to move themselves out of that dominating position anyway, and you're going to be free to carry on. So just being able to zero in on your breath and something like that is super important. And also by then I was already aware of like not holding your breath during some of these tense movements, you know, like that's one of the first things you learn when you get into any sort of weightlifting, especially doing things like a deadlift. You see videos all the time with some guys passed out after doing this massive lift because he held his breath the whole time. And so that gasses people in jiu-jitsu as well. You know, you don't know what you're doing when you're getting started. So you grab on and you squeeze really tight and you use all your strength and your energy. And when you're in these positions where you're squeezing as hard as you can and holding your breath at the same time, you've just starved your muscles of the oxygen that they need, so they get depleted way quicker. So people are always like, how am I so gassed after fucking 30 seconds of rolling? Because you haven't fucking breathed. You've been squeezing tight and you haven't been breathing, so you are out of breath, and your muscles are now deprived of oxygen as well. So they're not going to recover for minutes. You need to stop what you're doing, step right back, have a good 2 or 3 minutes, let them recover, and then start again. But they don't. They just carry on. So yeah, getting into those two things, I was already doing some stuff, some sort of breath work without really thinking too much about it. And another area where I've really seen the benefit lately, and this is, I guess, as well, like we've been practicing meditation on and off for years now. That was, again, part of my morning routine. I'll speak about a bit, my 4:30 a.m. morning routine I had for a while. Meditation was a part of that. And meditation still, for me, because, I mean, I'm not an expert. I haven't really progressed too far with it. Like, it's still just about focusing on my breathing, trying not to think about anything in particular, just trying to focus on my breathing in for 4, breathing out for 4. That's all I'm trying to do when I'm meditating at the moment. Like, I'm not going into fucking nirvana or nothing like that, but just being aware of that and knowing how relaxed you are afterwards just by focusing on your breath. Come parenting a toddler who's like right on that age where the tantrums are a very real thing. Like, Sol is a pretty chill kid, really. Like, she's pretty confident. Like, she knows what she wants, and she doesn't really, bar being overtired, like, she doesn't really have these wild tantrums. Maybe we're just quite chill parents, and like we've kind of learnt to sort of deal with hers early on, but like, it's never really been anything to like pulling our hair out, not that I have here, pulling my beard out stress, you know. She gets into these moments, but more or less, like, what we've worked out, the easiest way to deal with that is to just bring her back to her breathing. Like, when kids are having a tantrum, especially at that age, it's because all of these new emotions are flooding into their body that they don't understand, and they don't know how to react to that. They're these big feelings that freak them out, so they stress out, and when we try and calm them down with stress and anger, it just amplifies everything. So we've worked out that if we just, you know, once we can kind of get her locked in on our attention for at least half a second, like, hey Sol, should we have a quick breath, and then we'll talk about this. So let's just breathe through our nose and out through our mouth, and we over exaggerate the so she really gets what she's trying to do, but every single time, 2 or 3 of those breaths, and then she's calmed down just enough to be able to kind of explain, at least in very minimal ways, like what it is that's going on, whether she feels grumpy, or whether she feels scared, or whether she's hungry, or whatever it is. Just those couple of breaths is enough to really diffuse the situation before it really, really escalates. Maybe we're still not in that proper full-blown fucking tantrum window yet. Maybe she's a late bloomer and we're just dabbling with it at the moment. But so far it hasn't been too much of an issue. So now if we go a little bit deeper, and again, this is something that I'm only just sort of learning about. And a friend of mine from back home has actually created an awesome course that is been my kind of foundation with this the last month since I've really started looking into this on a deeper level. So I'll leave that linked into the description. I'm assuming he's cool that it's a free course anyway. Like, he's just made this out of the goodness of his heart, which is fucking awesome. But the first thing that it really sort of opened my eyes to is that your breath work plays a massive part in your nervous system, and I'm not super familiar with this, so I've just got a few notes here that I'm going to be reading from, because it's easier than trying to sound like an expert and fucking making an idiot of myself. So your body has 2 main gears. It's fight or flight, which is the sympathetic, right? So this is all part of the nervous system. The sympathetic side speeds up when you're stressed. So the other side is rest and recovery, the parasympathetic, which slows down so you can heal, digest, and chill. So breathing is the remote control. Fast, shallow breaths tell your body to gear up, go into stress mode. Slow, deep breaths tell your body to gear down, go into calm mode. Inhales are our accelerator, exhales are our brake. So when you breathe in, your heart rate rises slightly. When you breathe out slow, your heart rate drops. Which, I mean, that's it in a fucking nutshell, right? Like nice and simple. So breath changes your state quickly. A few deep, slow breaths can calm your nervous system down in minutes. Faster, sharper breathing can give you the energy and focus that you need to go about your next little task. So you can practice balance with this. Breathwork helps you notice when you're stuck in stress mode, and it gives you a tool to shift back into balance. So just a few little examples of other times I've noticed this in my life. So one of the last jiu-jitsu competitions I was in, so before, this is actually the biggest fucking bracket I've ever been in. Like usually in the masters divisions there's only 3 or 4 people, sometimes you only have one other matchup. But this particular match, there was 8 people. So we're sat down there before the matches start, and you can't help but kind of look around and see, who's going to be my first competitor. So there's this one guy walking around, he's got his fucking Beats by Dre headphones on, and he's doing these short, sharp breaths, amping himself up, the real through his nose. Like he looks like a bit of a wild man, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, shit, I hope this guy's not my first matchup. So sure enough, this guy is my first matchup, and we get out there and he comes in so aggressive and so tense, and it took me a good minute to sort of get my bearings and sort of start implementing my own game a little bit. And by this point, he's completely gassed himself. So I get on top 30 seconds later and I get the submission win. There's another guy that's been sat next to me the whole time. We've been chatting in between rounds, like happy as Larry, really chill, calm guy, and he's talking to his coach the whole time before matchups there. Okay, let's go back to our breaths. So this guy's doing slow, controlled breaths for at least a minute before every one of his matchups. He breezes through all of his matches. He's winning everything on points, and then gets to the final, and it's me and him, and the difference is just insane. Like, this dude is so calm when he gets out there. I'm still feeling reasonably calm as well, but like I'm gassed by this point. I'm exhausted, and this guy is still going hard. He smashed me in the final. So like those two different sort of attitudes in terms of breathing, and again, like, it's just understanding more than anything. Like, the first guy just obviously had no clue what he was doing to himself with his breathing, but those two things, it's just that just amplifies everything here. One guy went in a stressed state, the other guy went in a calm state, and it came down to how he was breathing, and they both performed completely differently. So yeah, like the sort of main sort of thing I wanted to take from this is, like, breath is our bridge between body and mind, between tension and calm, between performance and recovery. So let's just sort of dive into that a little bit again. Like, breath is important to your performance. Breath is going to help you run better. It's going to help you stay calm in these stressful situations we find ourselves in, and if you're doing any kind of like competition based stuff in your training. And breath is important to our nervous system regulation. Again, something like I'm still learning about, the nervous system, not even just so much breath work, but like our nervous system, that fight or flight mode. And our breath is crucial to that. Your breathing is there in your emotional regulation as well. Like with the example with my daughter, like and it doesn't just go with kids as well. Like if you're having a bit of a heated discussion with somebody, like just taking a few deep breaths is going to give you clarity to help sort of deal with the situation so much more than just everything escalating and just getting angrier and angrier at each other. Take a step back, take a couple of breaths, and see how different your attitude is when you go back into that disagreement. And breath is also like important in presence, just in anchoring ourselves in the moment. I've been seeing this phrase thrown out a lot lately, like a conscious breath, and a conscious breath is such a beautiful thing. Just to take a moment and just take a breath and take in everything that you're everything else that you're receiving in that moment. Like, think about like standing at the beach watching the sunrise or the sunset and just taking a slow breath and just feeling that breath into your body, and feel everywhere it's going through your body, and then as you exhale again. So a couple of other things I kind of want to just sort of throw out there again, like I'm trying to do every episode, is just a bit more of a practical takeaway for everybody listening. So for those of you that haven't been doing a whole lot of breath work, or for those of you that are and just want a few other little things you can work on. So first and foremost, like the basics of how we should really be breathing is we need to be breathing into our stomach. We need to be breathing back into our head rather than up into our brain. The nasal cavity, there's two main chambers, I suppose we'll call them. One's going up and one is going back. So a deep breath through your nose and think about pulling it back rather than up is instantly going to help expand your diaphragm, because we're breathing down into our diaphragm. So when we breathe in, our stomach should be expanding. Our chest shouldn't be moving, but our stomach should be expanding. We should hold there for a couple of seconds, and then as we breathe back out, everything's contracting. So the stomach is sucking back in and we're breathing back out through our nose again. And so a really simple method to sort of just practice relaxing yourself and becoming more aware is box breathing. So breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and holding for 4. So just going through that pattern, and just, even if you just do it 3 or 4 times, but like I say, be aware of every breath. Close your eyes and just think about everything that's happening as you're breathing. Think about everything that you're feeling. Think about, be aware of what's going on around you, the lights, the sounds, the smell. Just take a few moments, practice these box breaths, and just be more aware. Another thing, before eating, before training, before going into anything stressful, practice 3 deep belly breaths. So breathe in nice and deep through the nose again, back into the head, open the belly up, hold for a few seconds, and then a slow controlled breath back out. And these exhales, these are the ones that can come through our mouth if we really want to, but a deep through the nose and 3 deep controlled belly breaths before going into a stressful situation is gonna pay off big time. Just try it out a couple of times throughout the day today. And the last one, if you've got kids, try our little breath drill with the tantrums, especially if you can catch it on the way up. Catch them early. Don't wait till they're full blown tantrum, not understanding what's going on. We actually had this issue yesterday with a bit of a moment, like she was beyond breathing. We could still calm her down, but she knew what we were trying to do with the breathing and wasn't having a bar of it. So catch them early. I'm still practicing this myself right now. I'm still practicing these same things in the most simplest, purest form of how you can do it. I'm practicing a conscious breath. I'm practicing my box breathing, and I'm practicing some deep belly breaths before going into these. I'll say stressful. My life's not very stressful at the moment. Before going into these situations. And I'm noticing a difference. Like I'm still learning. We're still going to keep unpacking this topic. So by all means, leave a comment, leave some references that you have, some websites, some videos, whatever you've got, leave it, and let's keep building on all of this together. So just as like a little bit of a closing one for this one, how about we just take a deep controlled breath together. So wherever you are, you don't have to lie down, you don't have to sit in the yoga pose, you don't even have to close your eyes, but let's just take a deep controlled breath together. So we're going to breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. So thank you so much for checking out this episode. Next one on the way, I'm going to be talking about mindfulness, I'm pretty sure. Stay strong, stay balanced, stay connected. That's the Grizzly way.